Good morning or good afternoon, wherever you may be in the world. We are going to get started in just a minute or two. We're waiting for a few more people to file in.
Hi, everyone. I think we'll get started. So welcome to today's webinar on Microsoft Teams Meetings and Lives event. Valencia, if you want to turn the good morning, good afternoon, good evening, if we have anybody that is from far away. Briefly, just want to let you know about Directions and Magenium, who's bringing you this webinar today, and then we're going to jump right into it. There's a lot of great information that we want to share with you today. So Directions is a Microsoft managed learning partner who's been in business for well over 25 years in the learning and development area. They cover all the Microsoft workloads for IT pro and end user audiences. And they have a comprehensive adoption and consumption solutions learning curriculum that covers a wide range of communication and change management, continuous learning, and surveys, just to name a few. Can't go wrong. Directions is your go-to learning partner. Magenium Solutions is a Microsoft managed consulting partner that covers the Microsoft stack. We have 12 Microsoft Gold competencies, and we're also a Microsoft Cloud solution provider. And we happen to also cover the Microsoft Teams world. We're a Microsoft go-to partner with everything Microsoft Teams. So with that, let's get into why did we think it would be informative to have this meeting today. So let's cover Teams by the numbers first. As we all know, information workers today are spending 50% more time of their collaborating online. And we all have heard the Teams usage has exploded since a year ago in March. There's over 115 million daily active users on Teams and 2.7 billion meeting minutes per day, which is, obviously that number has exploded as well. Also, Teams, they have 183,000 tenants in over 175 countries just for education. So it's not only being used in the corporate and government world, but also in education. So, and as everyone has been working and learning from home, people are turning their video on 2 times more than they ever have. So video is becoming the norm. Next slide. So with that, now comes the hybrid office. Surveys are showing that 55% of workers want a mix of home and office working. So I'm sure everyone's aware we've all been working this past year from home. Now there's many of us are like, oh, we want to get back to the norm, right? We all know the norm is not going to be what the old normal was, right? Pre-COVID, post-COVID. So we all know it's going to look different. So all of our employers are also expecting that it's going to look different. And they're expecting that that work from home number is going to double to at least 37% moving forward. So as we all start making that move, hopefully this year, going back to the office, you're going to see that hybrid workplace, right? Which will also impact the hybrid office. What will the office space look like when I go back there. China is also expecting that they're going to see this same impact of a 60-40 split over the next 10 years. So with that, what we want to do is we want everybody to be prepared for that, right? As you move back to that hybrid office, which will be the new norm. So with that, I'm going to hand it over to Valencia, who's going to go through Teams meetings and the live event experience with you.
Hi, yes. Good morning and good afternoon, everyone. My name is Valencia Baker, and I am with Directions Training. And as Peggy mentioned, I'm going to be giving you all the Teams meeting and live events experience. Over the next 40 minutes, what we're going to cover is just an introduction to Teams meeting and live events. Also, how to schedule and join meetings. So if you are the one who's going to be organizing and preparing meetings, then this is going to be for you. Once you're in the meeting, how to control meetings, active management of participants, as well as all of the features that come with the Teams meeting experience. And then lastly, how to set up and conduct a Teams live event. And we'll talk a little bit about the differences between the two. So Microsoft Teams, as you all may or may not know, is a powerful, highly effective communication collaboration tool. Within Teams, there's a lot of features, instant messaging, managing channels, file collaboration, but also you have the meetings and the live event experience, which is an extension of the meetings. With Microsoft Team meetings, these are essentially real-time collaboration, regular conversations between a group of peers, colleagues, vendors, clients, so on and so forth, similar to what we're having right now. Even though we're presenting as a webinar, this is a Teams meeting. Attendees have the ability to share their video, create whiteboards, and share other content, files, and information. Teams meetings does, however, have a limitation of up to 300 people. So you can have a maximum of 300 people on a call for a Teams meeting, which typically will suffice for just a regular day-to-day meeting that you might have. However, if you do need to broadcast or present, similar to what we're doing today, except for you have a large group, then you might want to consider using the live events feature. This is more so presentation style where your attendees are essentially just viewing your content. There's not much engagement. It does allow for multiple virtual presenters, so anyone can be anywhere up to 250 presenters, and they can share their screens and present content. And then you have sort of a team behind the scenes that's going to be managing the broadcasting. This can include up to 10,000 attendees, but as of right now, up through June, Microsoft has increased that number to 20,000 attendees. So if you're expecting to host a very large live event in the near future, then this would be a great option for you. The only, well, not really drawback, but the difference is that your participants are only going to be able to interact with you via text-based Q&A, a Q&A panel that's available in the live events. So let's go ahead and look at what it looks like if you are using Teams and using the Teams live experience. So I'm going to go ahead and in my slideshow, and I'm going to navigate to my desktop application of Teams. So Teams, being a part of the Office 365 suite, allows for you to be able to access the application from anywhere. So you can access it from your work desktop if you have one at home. If you're in the office, you can access it from there. If you're on a laptop at your favorite coffee shop, you can log in online and access your Teams environment from there as well. You also can access it from a mobile device. So being able to be backed by the powerful Office 365 cloud software suite, Teams is able to allow for collaboration real time anywhere amongst colleagues, which is going to be beneficial when you have employees who are in the office and employees who are still remaining at home. Now, what you see on the screen here is my Teams interface, and I'm accessing the Calendar tab. The Calendar tab is the main area where you're going to get started with working with meetings and scheduling meetings. There are multiple ways to schedule a Teams meeting. Similar to how you would schedule meetings with Skype, Skype, however, only allowed you to schedule the meetings in Outlook. With Teams, you can schedule them online. You can schedule them in the Teams desktop application from a mobile device, and you can schedule them from Outlook. So if you'll notice up here in the top right corner, we have a few options. Meet now, which would allow me to start a meeting immediately. No attendees. I can invite people once the meeting has started, or I can choose to schedule a meeting. So I would select the new meeting option, and that's going to open up a new meeting window. Now, a lot of these fields are going to be familiar to you. You have the title of your meeting. You're going to add your attendees, your date, time. You can set up whether you would like it to be recurring. You also can add a particular channel if you're a part of a team, a location. So this will be beneficial for, again, for those who might be in the office and there's a specific room location that they're going to be using, a conference room. And then after that, within the body of the meeting details, that's where the Teams link is going to be placed. So if there isn't any other information that you're including, then the Teams link will be included here. Now, let's say you're not so comfortable with using the Teams environment just yet, and you want to be able to schedule a meeting with Outlook. You can do that as well. So if I open up my Outlook, familiar with the ribbon here, of course, this looks like a regular Outlook application. Under new items, you'll see the option to schedule a Teams meeting. Once you select that, it's going to open up again the meeting window, and then you would add all of the information necessary, your attendees, the date and time, and then you can already see here that the Microsoft Teams meeting link has been included in the body of my email for attendees to be able to join via this link, or they can dial in if they want to just listen from an audio device. Now, if you already have a meeting, let's say you have a meeting already scheduled on your calendar, and it's not a Teams meeting, you could simply go to it, and I'll just choose a regular meeting at this point. And on the ribbon, you'll see a Teams meeting button. So any meeting, any regular meeting or appointment can be escalated to a Teams meeting, which will then create that link and allow anyone who may not be in the office to attend because they'll be accessing it virtually or online. So those are two of the main common ways that we use Teams to schedule our meeting. Now, once the meeting is scheduled, you'll see it placed on your calendar, your Teams calendar, as well as your Outlook calendar. And then also your attendees, they will have the invite for them to accept or deny if they're unable to attend, and it will be placed on their calendars. Now, once it's on your Teams calendar, again, you can join a meeting from anywhere. Now, let's say someone is on their mobile device, they'll get a pop-up and it'll let them know that they can join. So any meeting that I want to attend or even see the details of, I can double click on it in my calendar and it's going to open up the meeting details. If I'm the organizer, I can edit my meeting details. If I'm not, I still have access to different components of my Teams meeting even prior before it starts. So I can select the chat tab, which will allow me to access the chat window. I also can share and upload files with my attendees, access the meeting notes and the whiteboard. These are all accessible prior to, during, and after a meeting has started. Now, once you're ready to join a meeting, and I'll go ahead and close out of these meeting details, you would see as soon as you're about 5 to 10 minutes before the meeting starts, the join option will become available. However, you can join a meeting at any time. It doesn't have to be at the scheduled time. You might want to go in and test the environment. So I have a test meeting here that I can click on. And then once I select join, let me discard that, close. And I have to be careful when I do this because I don't want to get kicked out of our meeting. So once I select join, the only thing I'm going to show now is the pre-meeting screen. This is the screen that you'll see whenever you're joining a Teams meeting. You have the options to set up your video and audio device components. And even once you've set them up prior to the meeting, after you join, you're going to have the ability to access this information as well, which I'll show you in just a moment. But if you wanted to use your computer audio, that's by default selected. You can choose phone audio if you want to join and use your mobile device and have it call you on your phone. You also can select room audio, and this is if you have perhaps a conference room that's set up with the Teams room components. You can use the room audio, and then it will connect to the room audio within the conference room, and you'll use that for your audio and video components. And then lastly, of course, you have don't use audio. Now, over on the left-hand side, you can turn your camera on and off, and it will allow you to access your camera. So if I turn my camera on, You guys can see me, and I've applied a background filter. There are background filters that are included, which will give you a little bit of variety rather than just your regular old room that you're presenting in. Because if you're at home and you might be working in the kitchen, people don't want to see your dishes. So you can turn on a background filter by choosing any of the options here, or just the blur filter if you wanted to just blur your background. So you can do that by turning on your camera and again selecting the filters. Now, after you've joined the meeting, you're going to be entered into the room. Now, depending on if you as the organizer or if the person who set up the meeting turns on some of the meeting options, such as the lobby, you may not be able to enter directly into the room. Now, one of the options that's available is when you select on your meeting again, if I double click on it, it's going to allow me to access my meeting details. Now that this has been scheduled, I'll see the option for meeting options here. And what meeting options does, it allows me to set up some preliminary items for my meeting, such as whether or not people can just join the meeting prior to me attending or if they have to wait in the lobby. And what that means is when they join, it'll just say someone will admit you into the meeting. So you can set that up for each individual meeting. It doesn't have to be something that you save. So one meeting, you can have a lobby. The next meeting, you don't have to, as well as presenters. So if you wanted to have specific presenters in a meeting and then everyone else be an attendee, then you can select from the drop down who you would like to be the presenters based on whoever you invited to your meeting. So after you've set up your meeting options and then you've joined the meeting, you will now be placed into the meeting room. So let's go ahead and look at our meeting room, and we'll use that as an example of what it looks like. So this is the meeting room. No one has their cameras on, so that's okay. I'm not saying you need to, but no one has their cameras on. So typically when everyone joins into the meeting, once you've reached up to 9 participants, they'll be shown here in the 3x3 gallery view, and then the rest will be displayed down here as a thumbnail. If you want to interact with your participants, perhaps maybe pin people to the screen, mute or unmute, you can do so by either selecting the options next to their name. You can see here that I could pin Jim to the screen. So if he was presenting, I could make sure he's my main presenter and everybody else would just be placed into the thumbnails. And then I can also unpin by selecting those options as well. Up at the top is where you're going to find your meeting room controls in the toolbar. Now, similar to Skype, if some of you all were using the Skype for business meetings, there's a meeting room toolbar that allows you to access all of the features of the meeting room. So the participants icon here that looks like 2 people is going to open up a participants panel, gives you a full listing of everybody who is in the meeting. I have some of the same controls that I had previously. So if I select more options next to someone's name, I can pin them, I can spotlight them so that everybody sees them as their spotlight. I also can make certain people attendees. So by default, everyone is able to present, as you saw in my meeting options. But if I wanted to make sure that people didn't share their screen or weren't able to share their video, I would make them an attendee. I also can invite additional people here as well. Next to my participants panel, you're going to see what looks like a cartoon chat bubble that is going to open up the conversation or the meeting chat. And don't worry, you guys, we're going to have a question and answer portion at the end. So for those of you all who are asking questions, we'll be sure to answer those for you towards the end, okay? So over here in the meeting chat panel, again, this is where you can engage with your attendees, send messages. You also get a history of who joined the meeting. And then in addition to that, if you're recording, as you all may have noticed, it will let you know that a recording has started and you can access the recording from the meeting chat as well. The great thing about it is, even though we all have varying schedules, there may be times where you schedule a meeting or you're scheduled to attend a meeting, and then a week later when that meeting is supposed to start, you get pulled away, right? It happens. You can access all of the content of the meeting, even if you weren't present at, let's say, the beginning, or even if you couldn't stay till the end, because all of the content is going to be placed into that meeting chat, which you can then access in your team's interface. So you never have to worry about missing an entire meeting, especially if it was recorded. Next to that, we have the raise hand feature. So raise hand just allows anyone who might have a question during your presentation to select that, and there'll be a hand indicated next to their name. So Peggy or Jim or Tom, if you guys want to use that raise hand just to show people what it looks like. And then your presenter will let you know, okay, I have a question, or they might answer that question for you at that time, and you'd be able to see that. Now, next to the raise hand feature is where you're going to find the more actions menu. And this gives you all the remaining features that are available. So device settings, for example, we talked about you can set those up prior to joining the meeting, but even in the meeting, if you needed to switch to a different headset or a camera, you can access that from device settings. Also, meeting details gives you information about the meetings, the copy and join link, so on and so forth. By default, as I mentioned, we have the 3x3 gallery view. Now, of course, you have to have that many people in the meeting for it to be in a 3x3 format. If you only had 4 people, then it would show up in a 2x2 square. You also have together mode, which is one of the newer features that was rolled out in the previous months. So it allows you to essentially have anyone who has their cameras on in a different type of scenery, similar to the background filters, and you can change the scene down here in the bottom left corner. Again, providing attendees and participants with a variety rather than the regular scenery whenever you're conducting a meeting. And then just some additional features for viewing full screen. You also have the ability to have teams call you. There may be times where you need to use your phone as your audio device, so you can have teams call you on a preferred phone number. Background effects are available here as well. Remember, if you want to turn on your camera and apply those. There's also closed captioning, so you can turn on live captioning during your meeting. This is also where you select to stop or start a recording. So anyone can start or stop a recording depending on your organization's policies. And then down here at the bottom, there's a dial pad if you have the ability to use that feature in your organization, as well as turning off incoming video. So if you don't want anyone in your meeting to present video, you can turn it off. Up here, we have just our video and audio controls to turn them on and off, and you get a preview of your camera if you want to turn it on. And then lastly, the last meeting control that's available is going to be your sharing options. Now, of course, I'm sharing my screen, so if I select it, it's going to stop sharing. But once you select the sharing options tool, it's going to pop up with the menu bar at the bottom. And it's going to give you several options for presenting. So you can present your desktop, or if you have multiple desktops, you can choose which screen to present. You also can choose the Windows Share option, which is going to allow you to choose an application that's actively running on your computer. Then you have PowerPoint. Of course, PowerPoint being a Microsoft Office application, you can directly share your presentation right in your Teams window, and you don't have to navigate or open it up on your desktop. It's the only application that allows you to share its content directly in the Teams meeting. Otherwise, you would choose the window option. And then lastly, the whiteboard. The whiteboard is available as well. So you can use the digital whiteboard in order to use inking, notes, anything that you would typically do with a dry erase board, maybe a brainstorming session. You can share the whiteboard and everyone can write on it using the digital ink. All of those options are available by selecting the sharing tool right next to the leave option. Now, if you are the organizer, you will notice that there's a drop-down arrow next to this whenever you organize a meeting, and it's going to allow you to end the meeting as well. If you're just an attendee, you only have the option to leave the meeting. All right, so those are your meeting room controls. And then whenever you are, again, the organizer, one thing that someone commonly asks is, can I mute everybody? And the reason for that is, of course, as I mentioned, you can have up to 300 people in a Teams meeting. And let's say you have about 20 of them who just happen to have their microphones unmuted. You can use the participants panel, and there are some options. Like I said, you can go to the individual themselves, or next to the participants in the X button, there's a more actions where you can turn on the feature that will that doesn't allow attendees to unmute themselves. So if you wanted to, you can make it so that no one could unmute themselves during your meeting. Now, this is typically not used in smaller meetings because, like I said, this is for engagement purposes. So you want people to be able to talk with you and things like that. And then also, depending on your organization's policies, you might see a mute all option here as well. Normally, however, by default, whenever 4 or more people enter into a Teams meeting, they're automatically muted. So you don't have to worry about those 200 people coming in and accidentally not unmuting their microphone. So that's just a common question that a lot of people have during the Teams meetings. Now, we've talked about Teams meetings. Let's talk a little bit about live events. So as I mentioned before, the Teams meeting experience includes live events as well. And by live events, we mean events that are essentially broadcast out to a large number of attendees. Now, to schedule a live event, you would go back into your Teams environment on your calendar tab. Next to new meeting, you'll notice a drop down. You'll see the option for live event. So once I select live event, a new dialog box is going to appear. This dialog box looks similar to the schedule a meeting one, except for now I have a few extra options. So again, I have my title here, so I can schedule my live event, whatever I want to call it. So we'll call it live event test. And then choose a location. So again, if it is a hybrid situation where you have half of your attendees in the auditorium at your organization, and then the rest are going to be viewing live, you can choose a specific location for those who are on site. The start and end time of your live event, time zone, all of the information that is relevant for your event. Now, over here on the right-hand side is where you would invite presenters. So these are the people who you're going to give access to present at any time during your live event. Maybe some vendors who need to explain their content, or just other colleagues who have something to present during a webinar. Over here is where you're going to set up your role. So there are 4 specific roles that you have in the live events. You have an organizer, producer, presenter, and an attendee. The organizer is the person who schedules the live event. They make sure everybody has the appropriate permissions, invites the attendees, selects group members, so on and so forth. That's what I'm doing right now. I'm officially the organizer. I also have given myself the producer role. So the producer is the person who is going to start and stop the live event. They're the one who is going to manage which presenters are showing at what time. They're behind the scenes managing everything during the actual live event. Then you have your presenters. So your presenters can present audio, they can turn on their video camera, and they can share their screen and moderate the Q&A panel. But that's all they're doing. They're just sharing. They're not doing any of the producing aspect. And then lastly, you have the attendee. And of course, that's the viewer. That's the person who's watching the live event. And the only thing they can do is participate during the Q&A. So after I've set up my live event with all of my details, I would go to next, and this is going to be all of the permissions in terms of who can access the live event, and then what will take place as you're producing. So there's several options, people and groups, so only specify people who you share the information with, anyone in your organization that's signed into your tenant, and then lastly, public. So it'll be open to anyone, you share the link and they'll have access to it. Down here at the bottom is where you'll set up everything that entails your live event. So you have recordings, whether or not it's going to be available to the attendees, captions, so you can set up captions and it translates up to 6 languages at a time, and you would just choose the appropriate language of the person who is speaking. An attendee engagement report, which will just let you know things like how long someone's been on, if they've been active in the Q&A panel. And then lastly, turning on and off the question and answer panel, if that's something you're going to allow in your live event. And you'll notice there is an option to use an external device. So if you have a very intricate conference room and it already has broadcasting equipment, you can set it up so that Teams pulls from there for the live event rather than using Teams as the live event. And then a specific URL if anybody needs support. And then after you've set up everything, you would go ahead and click schedule. And then it's going to be scheduled on your calendar like normal. Now, the difference between a live event in terms of the attendees and a meeting, you'll notice that I wasn't able to just type people's name into an attendee field. You would get this link and then you would share it wherever appropriate. So if you have a specific web page where you're hosting the event and you want to give people access using the link, if it's just an open link, or if you have a specific list, maybe people register, then you would send them the link that way. This is how you would get that information. You wouldn't just share it with everyone. Now, after the live event has been set up, you're ready to join it. Now, for this portion, I did have to do screen captures because I can't join a live event while I'm in a meeting. So I will go ahead and close this. And another thing to note is the live event feature in terms of the producing and the organizing and the presenting has to be done from the desktop application. Attendees can view from anywhere, mobile, web, desktop, it doesn't matter. But if you are producing, you do have to be using your desktop. It's not available in the web or the mobile version of Teams at this point. Hopefully in the future, but as of right now, we got to use our desktops. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and navigate back to my PowerPoint and just show you guys just a little bit of what it looks like behind the scenes when you have a live event. And if you've ever hosted a webinar or maybe used the Skype broadcast, if you were using Skype before, you may be familiar with this concept. But this is what happens after you join the live. So it hasn't started yet. This is me as a producer. I have two screens, my queue up screen, and then what is going to be live at the time. At the bottom, I can choose the share option, which will allow me to share either my content, or if I have presenters, I'll be able to get their content and share and add them. So once I choose share, it'll show up here for queue. I can make sure everything is great. And then I would choose send live. Now, some other options that are available, as I mentioned, in the top right corner, these are some of the tools that are available. So you can check your bandwidth and see your engagement and make sure everything is available with this essentially heartbeat symbol. But what I have open here on the right-hand panel is going to be the Q&A. So as people are asking questions, you can choose whether or not you're going to publish that question or manage it privately. And I will say that if you are acting as the organizer, producer, and the presenter, this can be a little bit challenging because you're playing all of those roles. So it is good to maybe have one other person who can help moderate Q&A if it's a very large event. But this is just one of the options that's available. You still have meeting notes that people can use and access and take place. And then the chat window is for you and the presenters. So if you have multiple people presenting, you guys can have a private chat area where you're talking back and forth about things throughout the live event. Okay. And then this is just what it looks like if you queue up something. So I have some content here, it's queued up, and then it'll give me the option to send it live. Now, once you start a live event, you cannot stop it. So once you start it, if you needed to change something or needed to exit out of it, it would officially end the event and you'd have to start it over and create a new link. So you want to make sure that you have everything set up, and it tells you when you're pre-live and when you've gone live. And as you all know or may not know, with broadcasting, there's always a delay. So even what you're setting up, your attendees won't see it for at least 10 or 15 seconds after. So no biggies there. But this is what it looks like if you, again, are producing the event. If you're presenting, you'll have some options and you'll see the ability to be able to present your information and share that with the person who is producing. But you don't have to be in the same place, which is great. Everybody can be in their own individual areas, whether they're remote or in their office at work, and be interacting with the live event if you're a producer or presenter, and the attendees can watch from anywhere. So that's essentially the live event experience. So you have your Teams meetings, which remember is going to be for up to 300 people on the call. It allows for more engagement and interaction with your attendees, whereas the Teams live event is going to allow you to really broadcast to the masses, much larger content, have additional presenters, and be able to really share and get information out there for your organization. All right, so before we open up the question and answer portion of this particular webinar, do want to update you all with some important information regarding Microsoft Software Assurance training vouchers. So for those customers with enterprise licensing agreements, please note that your training vouchers or SATVs are being retired this year. So you'll want to make sure you use them before these deadlines. You can let us at Directions know if you need any assistance in processing your vouchers. And a great way to utilize those vouchers is with a new Teams end user one-day course. The SATVs are normally only good for certification training, but now there's an option to use them for Teams training. And that course ID, if you're interested, is 55300. And if you have any additional questions or want more information about the SATVs and their expiration, I have my wonderful colleague from Directions, Tom Bannock, on the line, and he'd be happy to answer those questions for you as well. So with that, I am going to open up the floor if anyone has any questions that they'd like answered regarding any of the information shared today by myself, Peggy, Tom, or Jim, then please feel free to go ahead and ask those questions now. As I mentioned, I'm going to be monitoring the chat panel, so I'll go through and see if there are any Teams-related questions that you all might have answers if they have not already been answered. All right, Courtney, so I saw your question about the Q&A moderation panel. I can actually go back just in case you didn't see that. I'll go back 1 or 2 slides so you can see what that looks like, because I had a feeling that would be the one of most interest, so I wanted to make sure that I captured that. So this is what the live event Q&A panel looks like, and once it's open, you can make announcements to your attendees, and then from your side, any presenter or producer will have access to this panel. So when a question comes in, you'll see it under the new tab, and then you can choose from when someone sends a question, whether or not you want to publish it to everyone, dismiss it, or you can answer it essentially behind the scenes and it wouldn't be shared with other attendees. But all of those controls happen once someone officially asks a question. That was a great question. And yes, that is correct in terms of the Teams level. You do need the E3. So yes. All right, I see Eric is answering a lot of questions. You're on it. Okay, we have a good question from Renee. Are the Teams meetings able to integrate with Microsoft Dynamics? Is there anyone in particular that you, Eric, is there anyone in particular that you are expressing? Because yes, there's a yes and no, I'll say, because with Microsoft Teams being a part of Office 365, you do have all of the information in terms of being able to access the cloud apps, Microsoft Dynamics, all the Power Apps. Now, whether or not it's integrated into an actual Teams meeting, the answer to that is no. But the great thing about Teams meetings is that it allows you to be able to multitask during a meeting. So if you needed to access additional information, if you needed to navigate to any of the other Microsoft cloud-based, desktop-based, whatever it is that you need to access the Microsoft Dynamics, any of the Power Automate, Power Apps, if that's something you wanted to incorporate into your Teams meeting, you could still do so because you're able to navigate and move throughout. With the live event, you're still able to navigate, but the sharing is not as flawless. So you have to share queue. The next thing you have to come up and you'll have to kind of take that share down and queue up the next item. So it's not as flawless if there was something that you were wanting to show. But if you want to just collaborate and work within the Microsoft Dynamics with your group of peers who you're presenting to maybe in a regular Teams meeting, then I would definitely suggest using the Teams meeting feature for that. But great question. Did anyone else have any additional questions for myself or Peggy or Tom or Jim? We are here if you have any additional questions. Courtney, there is information. I don't have any specifically with me at this moment, but there is information on Microsoft's support page. They do have info about live events and some of, I wouldn't say specifically case studies, but they do have some feedback from different organizations that have used them. I could say personally for myself, I have done several live events, and I used to use Skype broadcasting, so I am very familiar with the differences between the two, and I really, really liked the experience. I will say it was a little difficult at first with me being the, like I said, organizer, presenter, and the producer. So I had to really make sure I had everything set up, test it, and get it going. But once it's going, it's really, really good. Very user friendly to use, and I didn't have any troubles in terms of connections. And at that time, I did not have the best setup at home. So I can say the live event experience was really good in terms of that, and the getting the setup and making sure that it ran flawlessly without any connection issues. All right, and Eric has a question regarding further trainings like this. I'm not sure, Tom or Jim, if you guys want to chime in regarding additional trainings.
Yes, we regularly have webinars every month, and no surprise, a lot of them are around Teams training. And if there's something beyond the webinar format that you're looking for, feel free to reach out directly to me. I'll put my email address in the chat. Thank you for the question.
And I did notice that there were a few questions about the recording. We will be conferring after the meeting regarding the recording if it's going to be available. I'm not sure if that's going to be for internal purposes only, or if we are going to be sharing with the users. I did not get a chance to discuss that with Jim. So if that is something that we are going to offer, we will ensure that everybody gets access to the video recording afterwards. Typically, we do recordings internally just for quality assurance purposes. However, as I mentioned, if it is going to be available, we will make sure that you all have access to it. And Rosemary has a question regarding the training vouchers. So is training included automatically? Because she was not aware that the software assurance vouchers included training.
So, software assurance training vouchers come with enterprise agreements, volume licensing agreements, and if you go into the portal, the VLSC portal, that's where you can see what software assurance benefits, SATVs, as well as other benefits as well, what ones you have on your attached to your EA. And then and we can help you with that as well if you're not familiar with that portal.
All right. Well, Jim or Peggy, did you guys have anything that you wanted to follow up with before we concluded the webinar? If no one had any additional questions?
Not on my end. Thank you, Valencia.
Very welcome. Well, we'd like to thank you all for taking the time out to attend the Teams Live and Meetings Event Experience webinar. We really hope that you found the information valuable. As Tom mentioned, you guys are going to have everybody's contact information. So if you do have any additional questions, please feel free to reach out. We are more than happy to assist you. We hope that you are going to move forward with moving into the Teams Live and Meeting experience. We believe you will find it very beneficial, especially if you're going to be having employees and peers that are going to be working in multiple places, especially in the office and at home. It's going to be very beneficial for you all. So thank you very much for attending and have a wonderful day.